Hi, and welcome to Spiritual Alchemy Energy Transfigurations, the podcast. Tonight we have Matthew Embrey, the Shamanic Happiness Coach, with us. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello. I'm so excited to be on here and just to chat and be silly and awesome. I love it.
Cool. Yes. So let's start with your story. What's your story? When I talked to you a couple months ago, you'd started taking Reiki in high school. Usually like somebody has like a crisis in their life. Was this a chosen path, or did you have one of those experiences?
Sure. It's interesting because I didn't really have a big crisis per se. I've always been very spiritual, very attuned to different realms, different energies. I was never raised in a very strict definition of what the world is. So very freeing, very open, very metaphysical. And I can remember times when I was much younger, like 11, 12, 13 or so, I actually was introduced to meditation at that point, and I was able to gain a healing modality called Yohti, which the person who writes Spirit Guides, it was published in 82, I think. It's killing me right now. I'll get her name eventually. I haven't actually thought of this in such a long time that now you're bringing me back even further than when my story thought it would go. But
is it the popular one that does the cards and stuff?
She's
Doreen Virtue.
Oh. No, not Doreen Virtue. No, that would be really cool too. Her name will come to me in a second. But anyway, she attuned me to Yohti, which is a lot like Reiki, basically. It just uses a little bit different way of going about it, different support structure, I guess, different angels or different guides and whatnot. And so being attuned to a healing modality at that age really got me into a different level than a lot of other people. So for my whole life, I felt like really outcast and really like, why do I see all these things and everything? But about junior high or so, I really started reading some metaphysical books, and I love The Celestine Prophecy. If nobody's ever read that, it's a great book. And I remember I was on a boat launch on the Spokane River, reading, and I got done with the passage, and I was just like letting it permeate my mind and my being, and all of a sudden, everywhere around me turned white. Like everything was white, and it had huge halos and all these things. And I'm just like, what's going on, And so I guess my journey started, way back then. So I didn't really identify with a big healing crisis, except that the disconnection that I would feel around other people, just being such a powerful empath on so many levels. I didn't understand the separation of other people to me. And still to this day, I tend to be a very open book. It's very much in my personality to relate very well to other people in that space of like, we are totally family. We are brother, sister, brother, mother, son, whatever, all of that stuff. So in that space, that's not something that's very liked in high school and all of those things. So I guess, my healing crisis went through the bullying and all that kind of normal stuff. But aside from that, coming out of high school, I had done a lot more meditation, and then decided that more modalities would be really cool. And it just so happened that my mother and I had the opportunity to go and learn Reiki. And it was one of those 6-month kind of courses, 4 to 6 months. It's a long time ago. I don't remember. I'm 37 now, so I don't remember as much back then. So we took these courses, and this is Usui Reiki, so the lay of hands stuff, not the holy fire that we're used to today. And we went through 1, 2, and 3 master level, and then we had the option to take Karuna as well, which was pretty new at that time. The Karuna Reiki, which is compassion in action. So from that point, I went into college, and I always thought that I had this big ability, so to speak, to help the nature around us, like the world. And I'm like, oh, people aren't really part of that, right? And so and the interesting thing is that when traumatic things would happen around me, I would never freak out. I would always be right there in the ability of care, or just to be able to be in the situation and hold space. So it made sense to me that what is the name of your new modality of healing? The Yohti, is that the one? So this is one that's not taught anymore. I have the manuals and stuff, and I actually do plan on doing that again. But it's Yohti, Yohti, I believe is how it's spelled. Manuals in the storage over there. So, but so going into college, I went and started studying zoology. I wanted to go and work at zoos, or just work in the wildlife industry and help to create situations where we could maintain ecosystems. Well, I go through all of my college career and I end up getting a bachelor's in wildlife ecology and conservation, which is awesome because I learned how connected we are to the world around us, and we study so many population dynamics. So it more or less turns out that I learned how populations work, and we are animals too. So I took all of that and instead switched it around to trying to help understand a little bit more of how to care for the world, because I knew, like, yeah, we can save animals as much as we can try, but unless we influence the people or the structures that are causing our planet to be out of alignment, then it's really difficult to get into that. So we need to alter the minds and hearts of people who are doing this unbalancing, right? And you don't do that as a zoologist or a conservation ecologist. So for a bit right after school, I did think I was going to go into reconciliation ecology, which is an amazing field, and just utilizing natural habitats or old habitats that we have used that we no longer use for animal benefit. Again, I didn't feel right in that, so I didn't pursue that path. I instead decided to kind of come into the human aspect of it. And at that point, I really knew that pursuing more of giving healings and trainings and teaching was really where I was being called. And at that point, I also started to learn compassionate mindful meditation. And once I started learning this, I was like, oh, the mindfulness, this is something I've been doing all my life. And as we talked about the evolution of consciousness, it was bringing me back to my childhood. And I'm like, I've thought this way forever. What is going on? So it was really just like the universe had me do a detour, so to speak, instead of like this traumatic awakening. But I will say, when I knew that connection was exactly what humanity needed or needs, is when I decided to go out and do some free hug stuff. And there's been a lot of people that do that kind of a thing. And I just was like, I just have to go out and do that. And it was actually right after the Pulse nightclub shooting. And for me, maybe other people out there too, I identify a lot with the victims who are actually doing the perpetrating, because they're a victim of some type of disconnection, whatever it would be in this world. And so in that space, I would always go, wow, what would cause me to become so out of balance that I would go do something like that? And having this huge energetic background of Karuna as compassion in action. So my whole life has been influenced by energy and this compassion idea. So for me to like go away from that, what kind of suffering would I go through? And that just is, when I focus into that, it always brings me to tears. So I was like, wow, we really need to go out and start loving one another on this bigger level, loving way more boldly than we ever have before. And so I went out and did a free hug thing. I made a sign with spray paint and some, like, the little stencils and stuff. And it was kind of amazing. I met up with other free huggers. I even organized my own free hug stuff, and here in Reno, Nevada. And the one time when I met somebody, it was totally divine or universal divine intervention in that space. When I use God or universe, it's very interchangeable. To me, it's all one stuff. So excuse my lingo if anybody gets a little taken. We were out this one time, and beautifully, I saw some people across the street, and they waved at me, and they were like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Oh, you want a hug? I'll come and give you a hug." And I'm super silly, so I probably look a little crazy, whatever, with a sign and just like free hugs and stuff. But so I go across the street, and the lights just aren't matching up, so I can't get across the street to these people. But it put me across the street, and this is next to Silver Peak downtown. So First and Sierra, I believe that is, or First and First and Sierra. And I come across the street, and I pass a small group of people because they just didn't seem interested. And I noticed that the lights are not matching up to what I need, to cross and go and say hi to them. So I just wave them by, and I turn around, and I'm like, well, I'm going to ask right here in front of me. There's 6 people just chilling, and it just so happened that my maneuvering had put me next to a transient person. And I was like, whoa, this is very interesting, different, because a lot of us have programming that says homeless or transient people are not to be approached or taught, they're a different part of the world, whatever. And so I look at this person, and I was like, wow, I can choose to ignore and go across the street and be like, I'm too good for whatever, and I can only hug certain people. Of course, that's not what I was there to do. So in that moment, the universe gave me the ability to rewrite my programming right there. So I turn to this person, and I go, hey, I can already feel the energy coming in, so I'm going to get a little bit shaky in my voice here. But I go, hey, would you like a hug to brighten your day? And he turns to me, and he goes, no. Right? And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Well, and he proceeds to go, I don't touch anybody. Nobody touches me. Nobody talks to me. And he tells me this huge, like, in a matter of like 60 seconds of how much the world has disowned him, and vice versa, how much the world is, he has disowned the world because of like a small little bit of disconnection and cruelty that it's so easy for us to be in. And so the light turns, and I'm about to be like, well, I can walk or I can continue to engage. And I choose the latter. And I go, okay, why do you feel this way? He tells me, we end up having a 45-minute conversation. Right there on the corner, I didn't move for 45 minutes. And see, I can still feel that coming in. And I just did a loving kindness meditation right before this. So of course I'm just flowing with energy. So this person, his name is Michael McClintock, and you can actually find him on YouTube. He's called the Hiking Viking. He is not the one who is promoting themselves as the real Hiking Viking. There are 2 of them. It's actually just a homeless person. And sadly, I've only seen one or two videos. But there's the gentleman right there, and I think the video, you see him in the middle of a desert walking on, and there's, I think, a couple kids are just taking a video of him, and they somehow upload it. So, but anyway, Michael tells me about his mental instabilities a little bit, and how he just can't take society anymore. And how many of us are like, screw society, and we just want to go somewhere else and be in a monastery or whatever it is, right? So in that moment, I didn't realize this at the time, but he was actually somebody who in the early phases was upgrading us from 3 to 4 to 5D, because that transition is very interesting. A lot of us have ideas behind that, but it's just the way that we show up in the world. And so it dysregulates us a lot when we have to upgrade our programming and our energy field. And so this person was highly dysregulated and left. And so he tells me about his adventures and his stories and how far he's walked. And he's been up and down the coast several times walking and meeting many, quasi-meeting, being around many people. He doesn't talk to anybody really because of his suffering, so to speak. And by the end of our conversation, I was like, well, I'm going to have to ask him again. And I said, hey, excuse me, I gotta back up for 1 second. So he tells me his story, And he goes, so what do you think about it? And I'm listening with my entire heart. I've never done that in that space before, and I'm running Reiki this whole time. And the only words in my mind, in my existence, that could come out of my mouth was, "You're beautiful." And to say that to a complete stranger and a man, like, we have so much programming, right? That stops us from being in this love connection. And for me to say that, it was so big, and I broke down crying at that point. And he just was like, whoa, what's going on? And he's like, why did my story affect you this way? What's going on? And I was just like, you're beautiful. I don't know how to tell you otherwise, but you need to know that you're beautiful. And so to fast forward a teeny bit, we ended up staying on that. We went across the street. We did cross the street finally, and sat down and ended up talking for another 6 hours.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and I ended up getting several hugs from him. And that one moment.
Who got the healing?
I did, and he did, of course, right?
Right.
Because in the end, when he had to go, he was catching a bus, and he actually said, I'm super happy that I chose to trade in my ticket for a later bus, because he was looking for a pair of shoes. At the time, I had $6 to my account. So I could not do anything except to be there and hold space. And so at the end of it, he goes, I'm actually really sad right now that I have a ticket and I can't get a refund. Because I feel like I've made a friend. And so I had him sign my free hug sign. Over here, I don't know where it is right now. It's in the other room. I should have brought it in. I didn't know I was going to be telling a story. Sorry. And so ever since then is when I knew that connection is what cures all ails. And the reality of it is that we're not. Like the delusion is that we are disconnected. Okay, is that we're separate. That's the delusion. And so to experience that in such a profound way drove me into understanding that is what I do. And so I was like, wow, I'm going to be teaching compassionate mindful meditation. I'm going to be hosting world peace meditations. I'm going to be teaching people how to wake up in that space of, who are you really? Who are we really? How are we connected? And so that's kind of like my story. I guess if you could say there was a traumatic experience, it was just like the inner me getting that healing and knowing that, oh my gosh, this is what I'm here to do. So
right.
Yeah.
I think that's a great healer story.
Thank you.
I'm sure you got plenty more too. So from the holy fire and the Karuna Reiki, what modalities did you go into from there?
Yeah. So after a while, let's see, this is almost 2 years ago now. I started going to, this is more like 3.5 years ago now, but because I was doing all of my fun stuff in the community and trying to bring people together and be like, the reason why so many people are angry and they're wanting to be angry at the world is because we're disconnected, And so knowing the impact and understanding the spiritual realm that I live in was very important. So I started going to Stargate Meditations here locally, hosted by Denise Sheehan. She's a beautiful soul. And that was the first time when I walked in and I was like, oh, these people know me. But it was like we just vibe on that same level. And we see and all these things. And the first day that I actually walked in there, Denise knew that I was a shaman. And so understanding that in some other way, like I've always had some fanciful connection to a lot of indigenous cultures and the wisdom that's in that. So it's very just synchronous. It was obviously synchronistic. We're always doing things. There's no such thing as coincidence. I always tell people, delete coincidence from your vocabulary. It doesn't exist. It's a separation term. It's all synchronicity. So in the space of probably a year of going to those meditations, and it's a way to explore higher realms of consciousness and commune with guides. And there's so many different things. You can go on to StargateExperience.com if you want to see them online. Otherwise, if you're in town, there are other people right now in town that are doing them are Aaron over at Earthy Energy, Aaron and Rhonda. They do Stargate Meditations. I believe they just do them through Zoom right now, obviously for the times. But yes, if you're interested in those, they're very good ways of getting into this higher frequency that helps your angels and guides come in, and you get so much, what's the word? Activation. Activation is a good word. So eventually I discovered that she does this shamanic program, and she teaches people what shamanism is and how to utilize it. And you go through the whole medicine wheel and do all these things. So I was like, oh, thanks, universe. Apparently I'm going to go do this. So I started doing the shaman thing, and poof, it's just amazing. I didn't realize how true it was that so many of us are actually natural shamans. It's just really good to be getting the ancient wisdoms around that, and to be able to know when there's information that is coming to you to be reawoken. And then within my IU's family, it's the number of the students within the shamanic family that we're learning how to be shamans. Within my IU, there's also this gentleman named Dalak Batongi. He's a native Washo, and he's kind of indoctrinated us into the Washo tribe as well by giving us a little bit of lore. And one of those big things is the prophecy of the Rainbow Warriors, so to speak, to come through, and that is just the new generation of people who are here to help elevate the levels. Generally, I guess you could have turned it to a 5D consciousness, and etc. So. And the prophecy says when there's an eagle and a condor flying wing to wing, this prophecy is being lived in this moment. And so in that space, one of the things that there are many indigenous people around the world that are still trying to make it okay to share their knowledge. But a lot of the knowledge from indigenous people has been usurped or not understood with ethics. And so it's been taken out of context. And so a lot of medicine gets put to sleep, so to speak, or hidden away from the rest of the world, when this medicine, and it has to do with medicine. By medicine, I mean belief systems. I mean ways of walking upon the earth, understanding what our relations are and how close we are in the earth-based beliefs, how important that is. And so a lot of this medicine is put to sleep, and it's really time for it to come out to the people, the Rainbow Warriors, or anybody else who identifies with wanting to use them ethically and walk with authenticity into that space. And so we're gracious enough to be being able to learn so many of those things. So I am shaman, and I am a Washishu, and I'm still learning, of course, many indigenous things. I've hardly been able to glimpse anything. I would love to be able to speak, to learn Quechua and to learn Washo and Paiute and all these other languages too. And that is on the list. So, wow. So those are my, yeah. And the other things, in that time, gosh, during high school, actually, I forgot, I learned how to do tarot, how to read tarot and understand that. For a long time, I've been able to just access the Akashic records, and I had no idea what that was until people are like, come to the Akashic Academy and all these other things. And I'm like, oh, this is a thing, And so I learned about that and learned a little bit more about, what this means and how to feel into the correctness of this. So there's a lot of different stuff, I guess it could say, that I do.
That's kind of what it's part of the territory, isn't it? Mm-hmm. For a lot of spiritual people that go into healing. Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, pendulum,
Yeah, using a pendulum. There's so many different modalities or different trinkets or paraphernalia, like woo-woo paraphernalia. I love it. Crystals and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So how do you make us happy? Because you're the Shamanic Happiness Coach.
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you. So when you are called to be, when you're called and know that your life isn't supposed to be the way it is, such as you're suffering in some way, when you're called to redefine what suffering is, or let go of that term, and by letting go of that term, I mean you actually change programming in your understanding to realize that suffering is completely an option. And when you make that complete leap, or I help you get to that leap, So, thank you. Within that space, when you are called to come outside of your story, when you're called to just embrace your authentic gifts of uniqueness in this world, when you're actually here being like, what does happiness mean to me? Because so many people or other people are telling me what happiness is, but to me that doesn't resonate, right? Or maybe if you thought that happiness was being a successful movie star, or a billionaire, or whatever it would be, you have to write and have this amazing entrepreneurial startup company. Like all these stories that we live, they're not necessarily our story, or not supposed to be like my story or your story, or whatever it would be, right? And so when you come to me, we work through all of that, and we open up the channel to understand what your real happiness is. And we do that through a lot of different shamanic techniques, but generally walking away, you go, oh my gosh, I want to live life now. I want to explore. I want to walk on the ground because I feel part of the world again. I want to go meet strangers and all this other stuff. And it's fun because then you just see so many smiles in the world. It's really fun. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So generally, like, coming to me to become happy is such an easy term to come across, but the journey there and the opening of that is vast. It could fill an entire encyclopedia, so to speak. So it's been, a lifelong journey of me understanding what suffering is, or what these higher energies are, and how to rise above that. I used to think at one point that I'd be an amazing monk, and I mean, I'm like halfway there. But in my understanding now, it's all of our duties to become extremely uniquely happy for who we are, what we are here to do, and not to be like, oh, I am supposed to be this amazing movie star that does X, Y, and Z. And that's great for Jim Carrey, or, we could just go on and on with movie stars and everything. But all of those people are fulfilling roles that the universe has aligned with them, and they've found their own authenticity in whatever way. And so it's now time for you to find your authenticity and your happiness, and really understand that, like, the judgment that is so forced upon us in this world, that the society says that we have to judge so many things and hold ourselves to this really rigid form, is so old, and it really creates a lot of suffering. And so, yeah, I just am here for you with whatever background you have, whatever you prescribe to. It doesn't matter. I'm not one to sit here and say you have to believe in what I believe, but thank you, Chris. I am here to be in that space of saying you matter, your life experiences matter, and whatever authenticity you have is exactly supposed to shine. Because as we all shine together, the world's vibration raises. And so that's what I'm here to do, is to help everybody who comes around me, who walks my path. If the only thing that actually happens, and this is the most amazing thing about collective consciousness and unity consciousness, is when I'm conducting a world peace meditation, and I do the Art Town ones here in Reno now. So we did first one last year, we did the second one this year. The only event to be able to be in public, amazing. Every other one was canceled. The only one downtown at the amphitheater in Reno. If the only thing that happens for that 2-hour period that we're there is that we reduce road rage or something, that creates happiness, right? Mm-hmm. There's these rippling effects that happen. And if the only thing that happens in that moment is that everybody in this space gets some type of healing, and then just in our city, we get some healing in that space of less road rage, well, that causes less accidents, or we just know that cortisol levels, when they're continuously high, are just not good for us. So if somebody comes through that energy field and it lowers their cortisol level for whatever reason, that's perfect, right? They get an epiphany of an awakening, and that's perfect because that's the collective consciousness. That's unity consciousness happening right there. So yes, I could go on and on again, encyclopedia.
So could you give us a taste of what a session might look like with you?
Sure. So generally, a session is going to come where we meet up, either in the office or in the back. And yes, Matthew, M.A. Allen, excuse me, we do need a lot more of that kind of stuff in the LA area. It'd be nice to have a 24/7 podcast or a World Peace meditation right there. It'd probably be a lot.
24/7. Yeah.
Right? I know. It'd be amazing. So coming in is we do a clarity call first of all, because we need to know, what are you going off of? Like, what are we exploring? What are we doing? And that might just mean coaching. So we maybe need to make some lifestyle changes or perception changes, or we're going to go into a little bit of energy work, Reiki or shamanic. There's a lot of different ways to understand that the way that we think or act is modified by energy, that like baggage, so to speak, that we're stuck with. And it can be so amazing to be in a session because we might need to explore through conversation where an idea is coming from or why we're experiencing this in our life. And generally, the idea is to find out how are we going to love more boldly and transmute what we're going through into a higher level of consciousness or higher energy, right? One of the greatest gifts to be able to do is see from the eagle eye view, and that is outside of that story, right? What am I here learning? And besides my story that I'm going through, like if I'm suffering, outside of all of that, what am I supposed to be learning in this moment? What is the world around me telling me? So that because the world, the universe is conspiring for us, through us and with us. And when we go against that pull is when we suffer, when we think that we're the victim, right? And so that's my job, is in that moment of conversation, is to say, okay, this is what we can work on. Let's get into a session. Okay, it might be a coaching session. It might be energy in both. But let's use all of the tools that we have in our arsenals to deconstruct this story that we're saying, to bring out the beautiful healing that's within it. And so some of that might look like identifying ancestral patterns of belief systems, maybe, or sometimes we hear the term like, oh, we're so like our parents. And that means we're living somebody else's existence, right? And so we need to unplug from that. And so I go, oh, okay, cool. And one of the things is like, what merit is this bringing to your specific existence, right? And I love Byron Katie too. Is like, okay, well, who would you be without the story that you're going with? Who would you be without these thoughts? And like, what would you be doing if you didn't have this type of programming? And when people think about that, they're like, oh, interesting. Like doing, like people who suffer a lot from, thank you, Christina Grace, with people who suffer from, I could say, impulsivity. We could just use road rage as another example. I even experience it from time to time because I'm like, why did this just happen? And then I just have to be like, oh, it's for me to get into my body and love this person a little more, right? I mean, that's the trained thought. In the moment, I'm like, "Ugh." And then I go, okay, who would I be? What would I be doing if I wasn't mad right now? I would most likely be singing to a Disney song or something at the top of my lungs, just having a great time, just driving down the road. And I love just being in that space of like, wow, if I didn't have this story that I was attached to in the moment, I would be doing something that's more happy, right? That's not dysregulating me. And so how can I learn from that moment to just be like, oh, I'm going to transmute this suffering, transmute this pain, transmute whatever it is, give it a home, because we don't avoid. We never avoid. Avoidance buries it deeper. And it will always circle back around to us in more ways than one. And or in a different form. So bringing it out and going, oh, okay, I feel my anger. Oh my gosh, I do feel a little bit weird right now. And I love singing, right? And so you just go, I'm going to be happy right now, and I'm going to love you, and I'm going to love you, and I'm going to choose to love you. And it's a choice. It's completely a consciousness shift. I believe M.A. Allen, Mr. Allen, just said that we somewhat redefine, or we change what, yes, we become better versions of our parents. And in that way, our ancestral line is there for us because we have kind of have soul contracts, so to speak. I don't need to go into giant detail about that, but we're here for a reason, and we come into the families that we do, or we come into the situations for a reason to transmute whatever we have to transmute. And so in that space is the experiences of my parents for me, and by that I mean my beliefs. Do I continue those same actions? Do I continue those same lifestyle patterns and whatnot? Or is there something different that I'm supposed to do? And just because we're told that I'm supposed to have a certain working pattern, a certain, I'll get to that in a second, a certain working pattern, a certain work ethic, a certain work ethic, that we're supposed to like certain things. Those are all taught us, right? But when we get down to it, and I mean, in our society, one of the biggest things that you could go to is gender roles, and we don't need to explore that right now, but we know a lot of times the easiest thing is we're taught is that men don't play with dolls, and women are supposed to play with like kitchen stuff or whatever, or Barbies and all these other things, and they're not supposed to play with G.I. Joes and guns and all that kind of stuff, which is such BS, because we're all individuals. So in that space, can we let go of that story and just explore what it means to, for me, what does it mean for me to play with a doll right now? Like, this is kind of cool. I'm just going to emulate whatever, and in our minds, we go through all these little stories, and we're meant to do that. We need to create or like give home to so many stories. And when we're prevented from doing that, we can't heal those stories. So that is kind of one way that we keep generational karma going, so to speak, or generational baggage going, is we keep those beliefs going. And if they're good for us, if they have merit for us, then yes, they will contribute to our happiness, right? And are we supposed to do something else with them? Matt, yes, tradition is tradition. Yes, we're supposed to evolve within the tribe. And the tribe is generally just the people that you're around that think and act like you. And as we go beyond that, to the individual, understanding we are all connected, how do we actually say that one tribe is separate from another tribe? It's very difficult to do that, to make that kind of reasoning, right? It's a lot of separation right there. So that's another thing that we're going from, 4 to 5D in that consciousness level. But my favorite song for a long time, and I love it, anybody who's having a hard time, is Dear Me by Eric Hutchinson. I love that song. When you're having a hard time, that's a good one. That's a really good one. Mm-hmm. And when you're having a good time too, it's just going to be amazing anyway. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cultural aspects of evolution. I guess that's just a generalized statement. Mm-hmm. Do you have, besides the other awesome story you shared with us, do you have any other awe-inspiring testimonies of working with a client and having a breakthrough with clients?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time when you go into a session and we look beyond the story is just there to give our mind something to really pay attention to. And Tracy, hit me up. We can talk about that kind of stuff. Yes. When we're just getting caught up with the mind paying attention to the story, we sometimes will miss how baggage or how stuck energy, how dense energy is showing up for us. And so one way it might be showing up for us is like an addiction. And so one might come in for work on, a completely different area. Let's say I am always really mad at, I really need to learn how to love my job. A lot of people don't like the job that they're in. They're frustrated because they think that they don't need to be working there, or they don't like their bosses and all these other things. And everybody around us is there to teach us. So that's one of the biggest things. And within that space, just because we go in for somebody to learn how to like their boss, or learn like, oh, what is my path really for? And we might do some work, and all of a sudden the next day, and this has happened before, a client's reported to me, like they came in to work on there's some family issues, and it turns out that these family issues that were so dense within them was causing them an addiction. The next day they go, I don't have my addiction. And they literally were just like, I don't need it. Holy crap. And it maintained for quite a long time. And obviously we have many choices in life. And again, when things come back around for us, it's very complex, but a lot of times people think that just because I heal something or I go through one experience once means it's one and done. That's not really the case. Every time that we re-experience something, every time that we stub our toe or do whatever it is, that's the universe going, yeah, you learned that one experience, right? You stubbed your right toe, but did you stub your left toe and learn about it, right? And so it'll come through again for you on a deeper level that is, a lot of times we don't understand it, but we're like, oh my gosh, didn't I deal with this before? I've already had one rude boss. Why do I have another rude boss? And it's because this is a different energy, right? This is a deeper energy, something that you weren't ready for before. And now also, again, the universe is contracting with you to help transmute that situation, to transmute that energy into a higher level and say, how do you love more boldly through this? And then move on. And that's one of the things that we are so stuck on in this world is staying in a certain pattern. Eventually it will get to the space where it's like 1 year I'm having this job and then the next year I have this job. A lot of it is going to require economic structure to be rewritten as far as like how available abundance is for everybody. Because there are many things that just by being alive are our innate right of living. And especially as we go into this higher consciousness, because there is enough abundance on this planet for everyone, and it is very true in that aspect. We can look at a lot of different scientific studies, hence my scientific background, and that's one of the biggest things too. Is everything that I teach, I always look for the scientific basis for. Why is this applicable in the real world, and how does this translate forward? And so it's like in the previous example of this person having the issue with their family members, and then how does that manifest as I'm not dealing with my family members? I'm stuffing this down, and then as I have this release of programming, this release of resentment, of suffering, of whatever it is, all of a sudden this other behavior that I have is transmuted and it's turned off. And so we already understand. In a lot of ways, what we think about, we bring about, and we could look at a lot of times when we're having issues with communication, we will do things that affect our throat and our heart a lot of times, but our throat. And so maybe somebody is addicted to smoking, or there's other things of inebriation that they do, and that's just a translation, right? It's like, how do I stop myself even more from confronting this issue? Oh, I'm going to go ahead and block this energy. I'm going to hold it here with this behavior pattern. And so that's why stepping outside of the story gives us this huge, oh, that's why I do it. And then we kind of think it's hilarious and we go, oh, okay, I guess I can stop doing that. Or it gives us the strength to change our behavior, to own our behavior, the responsibility for ourselves, mainly the love for ourselves. That is the bigger thing too, is that we learn how to love ourselves even deeper in that moment. And so it comes to the space of, I now can love myself more because I'm free of this other story of whatever it would be. So that's a good one. I do love, we did this, I teach several classes. I've got an ongoing Friday group. Right now it's every other week. It's a compassionate mindful meditation group. And I teach basics of meditation in that space. We don't do advanced stuff. Like I don't teach you how to commune with spirit guides. That's a different class that I do. And you can see my website. It's always a progress in growing continuously, because I'm not a coder, so I have to learn how to do all that stuff. But as it continues to evolve, mainly on my Facebook page, it's easier to find the classes that I put on. But we go into deeper teachings, such as who are your spirit guides, how do you commune with them, what are your abilities, et cetera, et cetera. But in this compassionate mindful meditation class, I love showing up to it and not knowing at all what I'm doing. I show up and I go, what am I supposed to do today? Okay, I have no idea. And I just have to go into channel, right? And that's basically just going into the higher collective consciousness of who's there. Generally, I will be feeling things for people who come into class several days in advance. So I'll have an idea of what we're going to talk about. But I always will teach basics of meditation so that people understand that we are meditating 24/7. Anybody who thinks that we're not, again, is prescribing to some type of lie of separation, because mindfulness, just paying attention to our surroundings, our ability to what's going on in our mind, is meditation. And we can do that at 24/7. We don't just need to do it for an hour a day or 10 minutes in the morning. So I teach a lot of the basics so that people can integrate the powerfulness of meditation and how it can transform you, even just on a simple novice level. We don't need to be these huge bodhisattvas that come and write these huge books and tomes and stuff. We are all the bodhisattvas, reincarnated in some way at this moment. So it's just to reconnect to our roots and our reality. So in that class, there's this one that was super, super awesome. Where I showed up and I had this feeling that I was going to do this different type of love, but I was like, there's something else we're working on majorly with this heart chakra, also with our solar plexus. There's something really grounding in, like just pulling us in there. So I'm like, okay. And then I had this idea, I think I need to do an I am meditation. And in my mind, I'm getting this download as I'm driving, and I'm like, oh, okay, I hope this works. So I show up, really don't know how the rest of the night's going to play out. And we have a stuffed room. This is pre-COVID days, obviously. So, and I just tell everybody, I'm like, great, guys, I'm going to dysregulate you. You're welcome. And we're going to open sacred space. We're going to do a slight intro because we have a lot to cover today. And I go into a little bit of heart teachings and how we show up in the world and how it's super important to realize who we are and what affirmations do. And of course, I am is the two most powerful words you can ever say, amongst other things, but they're on the same level. But I am is such a powerful thing. It's a declaration of existence, it's a declaration of power, a declaration of love, whatever it would be. And so I give them a few examples. I try to put on a few candles on the middle of the altar, in the middle of the room, shut off all the lights. And I go, okay, we're not supposed to see each other. We're just supposed to hear each other. Everybody go into a meditative state. And I guide them, of course, through. And then I start doing I ams. And just I am affirmations, and they're random that come to me. And then I go, okay, once I shut up, the next person who has the butterflies in their belly, that's your time to speak. So whatever I am you're doing is exactly what's going to happen. So speak it. And then they say it. And we went on for 40 minutes of I ams. And it's just from all over the world. I am beautiful. I am worthy. All these things. And it's all organic. Nobody in the room's done this before. And by the time I tell them I'm going to pipe in again and kind of bring us back down so that we can remain on time and get you all home in bed and all this stuff. Because when you're flying high like that, you just lose time. It just goes quick. So we do this and we come out of it and we have about 15 or 20 minutes of share, and there's people there and you could tell that their makeup was running. Oh, it was just like every person in the room had a breakthrough. And I was just like, okay, universe, thank you for coming through me, and I'm just here again as a vessel, and it was just amazing to have that happen. So I do hope to do that one again with a brand new group of people who are completely unaware of what I ams are, because it's so fun to dysregulate people.
Oh, wow.
It's so fun. It brings you so much. Yeah, it brings you into that the ability to have the epiphany of what love really is when you get dysregulated. Because there's a lot of people who say this, Jack Canfield, Lisa Nichols, growth does not lie on the same block as stagnance, as comfortability and stagnancy and all these other things. And so if you want to grow, you have to dysregulate yourself in some way or form. Yeah.
Breaking patterns, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So, right now, where do you spend most of your time? What are you doing right now? Same stuff as you were a few months ago?
Yeah. So with COVID, COVID's amazing. It's allowed me a lot of time to go within and kind of revamp. And one of the biggest callings after holding so many world peace meditations is that's my next thing is traveling and doing those things. So I've done, developing my website, learning branding, and all these other things that you're supposed to do. And this body has to learn and all these things. And so I've been doing that. I recently moved where I used to live on the river, down on Truckee River in a condo, and moved into a home. So I got a lot of time to just do a garden and upgrade the space around my house and turn it into this giant fairyland and like awaken energies. And a lot of it too is just going through the shamanic work of the medicine wheel, because we're never really done. Once we learn it, all we're doing is learning what the medicine wheel means and how we continuously are moving on it, almost in every situation, also in every year, in every occurrence. So there's always something that we can learn. But a lot of it has just been communing with the universe to understand where the next, where is my to do next. And so in that space, it has been understanding that these world peace meditations are vitally and crucial now. I've been looking a lot at the energy online, and one of the other things that I now do is, in all instances, I'm being very conscious of what I'm consuming mentally, because that's a huge choice. And so staying on top of that. Garbage. Yes, a lot of garbage, a lot of doomsday scrolling. I heard the term today. People do doomsday scrolling, and it's so true. You can get caught in doomsday scrolling. So if you feel like you're in that, realize it and then change your pattern. But really going again with this online stuff is going, okay, how can I again go into the space of understanding that I'm here to help provide a higher aspect of things, much like people who are perpetrating heinous acts, mass shootings or whatever it would be. I feel for them, because again, what would it take for me to do that type of suffering? I don't wish on anybody. And for me, just to to try to be a dick is really, I don't like it. It hurts me a lot to be rude. And not to say that I'm perfect and I don't get triggered, okay? But this is, of course, I'm human. I have a body and I have still an ego and all these other things. Thank you. I'm in a TED Talk course right now. Thank you very much. Thank you. So a lot of what I've been going through is again, trying to provide that neutral aspect of how do we actually change what we're looking at. I don't want to bring a lot of politics into it, but how do we have compassion for the people that piss us off the most? And in that space. And that is such a big lesson to understand when somebody is being a gigantic light worker, to understand that they are there to trigger the stuff out of you. When they are meant to help you upgrade and not stay in an old pattern of whatever it would be, a lot of times we get caught in that, and we get caught in this like name calling or whatever it would be, and these judgments. And you can try to have conversations online, and generally you already know the outcome, but at least the energy is there. Again, like a world peace meditation. If all that happens is somebody else reads another comment and says, wow, why did they think that way? Or, instead of recommenting or being part of that conversation, if there's just another bystander, then I have shown up in that space. So that's a lot of what I've been doing is learning how to re-show up in this and help people transmute from these lower energy levels into higher energy levels, into that love, into unity consciousness. Yeah. And interestingly enough, I got a download for a book, so I think that might be coming through. It's in the making. It's starting.
Can you tell us what it's about, or do you not want to put it out there?
I mean, it's about unity consciousness in general. Awesome. But there's another way to be able to succinctly bring that to the public. Again, I have a lot of experience. I've been doing that compassionate mindful meditation group for over 3 years. And so I have a lot of experience on how to bring the scientific aspects of things and the importance of what we do into understanding for people that want the proof, and they don't like necessarily prescribe to woo-woo. I love that term. I love the term woo-woo. Whoever made that up, I'm just like, I'm owning it. I love that. It's
Do you know my tagline for my business?
No, what is it?
Woo-woo for your boohoo.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Right?
Oh, I love that. Oh, that is amazing. Oh, thank you for sharing that. I love that. That's beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. See, you're my happiness coach right now. I love it.
Okay, so you're going to put this together scientifically.
In more or less, yeah. There are a lot of books that do that over time in the past of years has given certain examples of how like collective consciousness has helped to modify certain situations, butterfly effect or whatever, that kind of stuff. And now there's another way of helping to identify it, because for more audiences, so to speak, because yes. There's the sense, how do I say? So upgrading into 5D, from my experience, and this is where, again, like when you are a light worker and when you're in the moment of being, when you're outside of the story and you're looking at everything in front of you and you're able to choose to suffer, not suffer, et cetera, when you're able to look at everything that's around you, what that kind of can be considered as, especially if you're following the universal guidance or your divine intuition, the true, how do I say, your higher self that comes through is never shameful, ever. And so that's how you can know when your ego's talking versus when your higher self is talking. Your ego follows shame and your higher self follows inspiration. And so when we are going through life and we're following in that inspirational way, you're technically can be referred to as on the tip of the arrow, the tip of change. You are a part of the change agent. You are the light worker in that space and helping. You may not know that you're doing it, but because people around you, generally, we don't know who we are or what we are until we ask other people and they get to tell us. Most of the time, the person who's going to tell you what you do is your clients. You don't know really what you're doing for other people until the other people tell you what you're doing for them. So we're just showing up in that space of a vessel. And so in that space, I've been in the consciousness without realizing it of higher vibrations for quite a long time. My inner heart has always been about this connection. And so that is really what I'm going to explore in that book, is how do we more fully bring in this connection of 5D or this higher level connection, this consciousness evolution into being, instead of choosing to live like that outside of society, creating more separation. Because a lot of us, we might feel like like I said, called to being a monk or called to going into certain spaces, and that's a yes. If you're called to do that, then and it's completely like gung-ho, this is going to be my lifestyle and everything, perfect, go ahead and do that. When you look on the other side of it, it's saying like, well, what if I don't? If there's ego playing a trick on you, then just be aware of that. And that's what I say, where's your to do. But in the space where
it's kind of funny, we were talking about this before the show.
Yes. We were talking about it a little bit before the show. Yes. And so there are myriads of places all over the US, all over the world, that you can go and be part of a community, and they are more than willing to allow you in, to learn how to maybe commune with yourself, commune with the land better, whatever it would be. And I asked the question of, why do those spaces have to be separate from normal society? Right? Those, and again, we can talk about reconciliation ecology and how we can utilize larger ideas of these communities, these earth-based communities. We can use their ideas and expand them to huge, great deals. There's even several handbooks that have been written about co-living. that you can find just by approaching a co-living situation and saying, how do you guys do it? You've been successful for X number of years, and how do you do it? And I guarantee you they have a playbook that they go off of. And the reason why they have that is because they were the ones to be there to help create that playbook, right? They went through the trials, they went through the fights in the house, they went through all the this's and that's, and going to therapies and asking other professionals of how do I cohabitate. And a lot of that, I guess you could say, what would be medicine that was put to sleep, because we used to cohabitate on large scales. Granted, going from one vibration to another required us to modify our society, because once we hit a certain density, I don't remember the number, but it's I want to say it's a couple, like between 1 and 200. Once we hit 1 and 200 individuals, then the governance or leadership family style needs to be modified slightly, because we're starting to separate out a little bit. But with the consciousness evolution, we can bring that back in, right? We can now have several hundred people, thousands of people together, and we can still cohabitate. I think Burning Man is a great example. It's a city that gets to be built, and yes, it has its tiny flaws and this and that. I always say, if you've never experienced Burning Man, go do it. It's a blast, really. I stepped outside of the story of whatever dirtiness you might think is there, because humans are dirty. Any other story that we believe is, woo-woo, or is BS. It's not woo-woo, it's BS, because we are dirty. And so it actually teaches you how to be self-sufficient and how to make your own choices. And that's one of the cool things about learning how to adventure for yourself. Learning how to experience for yourself. I mean, Burning Man just gives you this example of going out into this plethora of artworks that you get to interpret for yourself, and it brings you so in. And then also at the same time, the cool thing about Burning Man is that people are the art. And so you get to interact with people that you're like, I would have never, ever talked to this person, but it just turns out that this person might be like a Fortune 500 person, this all walks of life. And so you meet everybody. It's just a great equalizer. It's very cool. Very cool. So the energy is there for us to be in this other 5D.
Awesome. How cool. I can't wait to read your book. You better go to work. You got time right now, it's COVID, right?
I know, it's COVID right now, yeah.
Manifest it.
Yeah.
I know. I got work to do.
You got work to do too. I want to read your book. I want to see. I'm going to put this out there right now, because you already broke it to me. You want it to be a movie, and that can happen.
Well, that's my first book. Both of them are going to be movies. So
good. I want to watch those. I want to turn on whatever streaming service I have, Disney, Netflix, whatever it is, and I want to be able to watch that.
Absolutely. Yes. It's going to happen. It takes a lot to produce this kind of work. I want to thank you for coming on tonight. If you want to share, your email or your phone number to get a hold of you outside of your...
you can find me. Oh, this is going to be great, because I'm going to on my website, shamanichappinesscoach.com. And right there, just scrolling across the screen. Yep, you can go there and you'll see Matthew at shamanichappinesscoach.com. You can just email me. The phone number is on there, and you can find me on Facebook. You can message me there. That's Matthew Embrey McLean, Shamanic Happiness Coach. And what else? If you do attend any of the classes, then you get to come onto the community, which is pretty cool. It's just people who've gone through the transformations, who understand what it is to have that compassionate mindset in the world, which is what we need, the connection. So you can join that group if you've been part of any of my classes.
Are all your classes in person, or are they online?
I have several that are in person, and one is now starting online. I had it online for a bit in the beginning of COVID, and the energies that were coming through were vastly different. And so I just discovered, I was using the wrong platform. So, because I was trying to stream them through Facebook and do them on Zoom, not really the greatest idea to do. So, again, a body, and I'm learning and stuff like that. I don't write programs. I don't understand it that much. So
your higher self didn't shame you.
No, it didn't. It was just like, you're just going to learn. Just get to go do your thing, boo. And you're just going to learn. So I did some classes for a bit, and then they're going to be starting up again, probably in October. I'm going to buy a fancy webcam and all that good stuff so that I can take it everywhere. But yeah, you can generally, if you do want to just do a distance coaching session with me, that's totally fine. I can also do proxy energy work, and that's totally fine. If at any time you're able to come in and see a world peace meditation or whatever, all of those, or most of the world peace meditations that I've done are posted on my page, I believe. At least I know the Art Town one is, which is so hilarious. I love phones because I just had it on my phone. I was like, oh, my phone's got a fancy new camera. I'm going to try to use that. And it's supposed to, when the gyroscope or whatever it is supposed to tilt for you. And I tilted the thing, and it tilted for a second, and then it tilted back. So the entire thing is sideways. So just turn your computer sideways and you'll get it. Which, sometimes there's speakers on the bottom of our laptops or whatever, so it might sound better anyway. But you can watch that. That gives you a slight idea. Most of the world peace meditations that I've done have been to incorporate some type of modality to help waken it up within the collective consciousness, which baffles me that it's so worked in that way, because in our area I did a Mokuhu meditation one, and Brian Melendez does those locally here. And then after that, we started seeing a lot of indigenous things happen on the collective level. And with breath work, before Wim Hof came out and started to become really popular, I started working with Raquel Akiavada, and she is the Energy of Breathwork School, and she does gamma breath breathing. So we did a gamma breath where we instilled that into the grids around the earth, and then all of a sudden, breathwork becomes this huge thing. So I'm not saying I'm the only one that does this, because there's probably a myriad of people that do the exact same thing. But as far as I know, I'm the only one that was posting those, so to speak, as lives for everybody to see. I do have a nonprofit page that you can check out if you just want some daily dose of fun, and that's Compassionate Connections Matter, just on Facebook right now. And Compassionate Connections Matter, it's mainly just there to help really provide a different part of newsfeed, so to speak. I share a lot of stories that are always happy, connecting, and I think that a lot of the world peace meditations have gone through there as well. So that might be a resource for people as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much for coming on, and we'll have you back when you release your book.
Okay, it's a deal.